Dandelion Song here. This is, I was just looking at this word, Saturn, and I've been watching the Michael Nicholson channel, and I've been noticing a lot of really interesting things, and I did want to look at the word Adolf Hitler. His last video was about the Hitler numbers, and I thought that was really interesting. How did I get to Saturn from? Oh yeah, because he talks about that so many things are coded with the speed of Saturn. So what I did is let's take a look at this. I didn't do the hieroglyph yet. This is Ra, and this is the one. I believe this symbolizes the all and the nothing. I actually think they might be pointing to the truth beyond all these little gods who pretend to be the all, right? So that's kind of a speculation right there. I'm still decoding the language. But this part right here, and I like to break things down into raw gematria, but also according to the syllables. And I found this symbol in Washington, D.C. over the head of Isis. This was the treasury, and that was the offices of the puppets, past and present. And oh, it also has binding on here, almost like an ankh. I don't know how many of these it has, but this lays perfectly over that. And the saw symbol, it was meant to be a symbol of protection, and I think even the ancient Egyptian households thought of this as a symbol of protection. But I've seen, other Egyptian artwork that shows Ra, and I don't know if it was the first Ra, or Ra became a title after that, or if it was like a Marduk Ra, or Amun Ra, because Amun Ra was Marduk, I believe. But anyway, there's a picture of one of these Ra guys beating the heck out of a slave, and then behind him in the writing at his elbow was the saw symbol. And so when I think this is protection, I think it's protection for the gods, not for the people. And that makes sense, right? But I wanted to tell you that. And then also this, in the sense of that object that they had in ancient Egypt, this was a wooden club that had metal knives on each side. And so you can see why it would be a symbol of protection. But I really think it's only for the gods and not for the people. Then TU turns out to be blind. So I think that's always very interesting, because I'm trying to always pay attention to, let me just back out here, to the 35. I'm having trouble seeing my own page because I'm holding the phone in front of it. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so the 35 is the eye. And if you add 6, which is the field, which is, material consciousness, you could say that. If you add 6 to it, you have blindness. And this is blind if you add it up with raw gematria. These are the kind of decodes you can get when you study the raw gematria. You won't find these in books. I mean, if someone's written a book about this, I would like to buy it. But I don't think this is in books. But I think that we can, unfold all of this on our own, just honestly noticing these things, and then kind of like putting the pieces together. This is why I try to decode some of these major words, because I think later on they're going to come together, and they'll deepen understanding. So TU is blind. Interesting, right? Because U is 21. I'm going to come over here. So U is 21. Looks like this. I think this part, oh, sorry guys. This part is the stem of the chalice. So I think it goes like this. Okay, and I think it's an upward facing chalice because I think they do go left to right. So that would be the 2, and this would be the 1. So this is also the Vav. This is also the view in the east. And I think we're going to have a view in the east, September 15th, where Orion is pointing upward toward the star of Ra. This is the star of Ra. So I think that's the same thing, all of that right here. And then we have the T on here. Well, if we put this, just for a quick hieroglyph, just of this root word, and then we will kind of have a deeper idea whenever we see that inside of a word, what the hieroglyph is. So there's a lower part of this this chalice, of course. I noticed that in the ancient Egypt, the chalice of Hathor, they didn't seem to have a bottom on that one. And maybe that's because Hathor was really only of the upper dome. But I'm just gonna, I might be wrong, but I'm just gonna put the T here. And that way, if there was a lower dome, this is the cross behind the eye. This is the globus cruciger, right? The globus cruciger. Okay, so that's the quick thing on that. So that's TU. Now I don't see exactly how this is blind. You know, the hieroglyph doesn't really show me that this is blind. One way that this could mean blind is if I have it written upside down and it really goes this way. And this means that it doesn't have the upper dome. Because anyway, I'm going to have to leave that in the maybe box because I'm not sure how this hieroglyph equals blind. Let's see, we could take a 6 away from it. Let's take a 6 away from 21 and see what happens. So that's that's a 15, and that's an O. So U, let's confuse everybody. U minus F equals an O. Interesting. Wow, okay. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to have big pauses on these while I try to figure something out live time. Okay, I'm going to come back and look at that. Okay, well, anyway, the RN is the 32. That's your upward facing pentacle. And I think it's interesting that RNs are nurses, and they are not always educated about the truth. For example, they'll offer you pharmaceuticals and, you know, things that are dangerous, but their hearts, I've met a few nurses with, you know, like darkness behind their eyes, but most of them, they have hearts of gold. So I don't know if this has something to do with that. Now an urn is a, you know, it's ash. It holds ash. Let's see. I'm trying to picture what an urn looks like. Maybe like this. And there's ash in here. And this is interesting because I just decoded the word ash and I can't remember the context of this. Ash is a very interesting word. This is why it's in people's names. I just read in the book End of Days, the next chapter talks about Asher. Asher being the next name that Enlil took. And then he waged war on Marduk. And he won. And they captured Marduk and carried him away in chains. So if you want to hear that part, I wasn't planning to put that one on because it's more entertainment value rather than actual. But in in that chapter, this was Enlil. So it's interesting that he calls himself Asher. You know, and then he in this form, in this name form, he kind of rises from the ashes because he goes from defeated back to capturing Marduk Ra again. Wow, so just the ongoing saga of the Anunnaki, right? Okay, so Saturn. I really wish I could wind this up in a super duper cool hieroglyph. The N is the sound, and it is the way, 2 7s. And the R is the manifestation of the sound. Okay, I'll just draw that over here. Let's do it this way. The manifestation of the sound. And this would all be in the upright pentacle. Now I was just watching another channel. I used to watch Monkalesi a lot, and I kind of lost track of her, and so I was checking in with her again, and she happened to have this on her channel today about the 5 elements and the pentacle. This one being air, water, fire, earth, and the unmanifested. and this is the upper pentacle, and these are what we need to balance as human beings, and we also are balancing the different levels of our consciousness. Oh, it reminded me how much I used to study about the subconscious, and I haven't studied about that for a long time, but there's really a lot to know there. I also want to do a hieroglyph on the word wind. Wow, lots to know, lots to do there. It might be tucked into one of these videos, but I want to do one just on wind. It's the breath and the spirit. It's air, but it's in combination. These are all in combination with each other. Okay. All right. So okay. So this is 20. So we have the 3 and the 7 and the 9. I have the 93. And that's the 12, which you can see why this is like the Lord, right? L is the 12. There's a lot more to know about this number. I also learned on Makalasi's channel, this is the sign for Saturn, and that the metal associated with that is lead. And I thought it was interesting because, you know, in the 60s they had everything was lead, and that was kind of like the brain damaging element, you know, from the Middle Ages on to, say, whenever they started to ban lead. So I thought that was interesting because it's, you know, it's a poison. But okay, well, I had to make this video before I forgot everything that I knew about this. I'll try to do a part 2 where I pull this all together into a hieroglyph. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye. All right, guys, this is what I came up with for the hieroglyph for Saturn. It's pretty big. But this is the Sa with Ra inside. That's the S. That's the 19. And the Sa is the 20. And maybe this is the whole, you know, I've been wondering, what is 20? And maybe Sa is the answer to that. It's this, you know, this symbol of Sa by itself, you know, we have a lot of these ribbons, we have the ichthys, and that's a pretty basic code in our language, in our world. Okay, so I put the Sa parts on here. This is the A that goes with the S, and it's also part of the Sa symbol. So that's where that is. This is the 21. This is the, I'm gonna stay with, this is the upper chalice, and that the bottom chalice in the word Saturn is the manifestation of sound. That's sound, the N. So the RN is the upward, this part right here is the RN right here. I guess I could have drawn it like that instead of having it connect directly. I probably should have done that, because this would bring into the elements of the upright person, the unmanifested air, water, earth, which is the expressions of consciousness, and fire. So all of that would be in there. All right. And then the speed is alternating between, I think it's a 696 number or a 969 number. Actually, I don't know, but it is the other code in that is the F and the R, which is the 6 and the 9, because that's an 18. And then it's also in date form at 618, which is June 18th, which is the 169th day of the year with 196 remaining. So this 6-9, this is the keystone of the Freemason arch, and it symbolizes Cancer, which is balance, balance of the 4 elements. And in Cancer, the unmanifested would be in the center of the crab. But that crab symbolism of perfect balance goes way, way, way back. Maybe before Atlantis, but at least Atlantis, that far back. And so that's the keystone of the Freemason arch. That's a connection between the sun pillar and the lunar pillar, the dark and the light. And I believe that our whole school here is to, you know, walk in the darkness and learn to balance. learn to balance, and then after you learn to balance, you choose your side, right? Otherwise, it's not a choice, or at least a conscious choice. Okay, so I hope you like my hieroglyph of Saturn. I do have a lot of various knowledge about Saturn. You know, I've one of the things that I would like to just mention is that, you know, and I take all of this with a grain of salt. David Wilcox claims to be the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, and he claims to have insiders speak to him. And my feeling is that the insiders who speak to David Wilcox, they flim-flam him. So when you listen to David Wilcox, you need to kind of think about how he got flim-flammed and what part of his information is true. It doesn't blame him directly, but I think he gets flim-flammed sometimes. But anyway, one of his sources told him that they had secret space vehicles, visited Saturn, found out that Saturn, and they learned the history of Saturn. They found out that Saturn was inhabited by the Progenitors, who were giant beings, and they were basically outlaws that were excommunicated, and they came out and found our solar system, and they kind of inhabited the outer planets first, and they worked inward. And when they got to Saturn, they you know, filled the planet up, and then they built the outer ring made of colonies, and it was made of kind of a glass composite kind of material that they mined from one of Saturn's moons. And that when the Nazis and the secret space program people went out to Saturn, they saw that the ring was now a bunch of broken glass particles. But when you got up close to them, it was like construction. It was like as if you took a city and crunched it up. But you could still see parts of the buildings and the chairs and everything. And he said that it was a city, a colony made for giants, who were, you know, at least around 70 to 90 feet tall. Then, so they were building their colonies. Okay, here's my aside about Saturn. But so they were building their colonies, and I guess they had enemies somewhere in the universe. There's Saturn. Sorry. Okay, they could turn and aim this, and they could use it as a Death Star. And this had deep space disruption ability, so they could target something very far away. Well, the people who, their enemies, found out about this. They came over here and destroyed Saturn before they could cause any havoc with this giant weapon they were building. Well, so that's why it's all broken up. But so these guys knew, they knew that they were going to be destroyed, because for them, time is not linear. They don't have time blindness. They can see. So as soon as somebody gets an idea that affects a timeline, they can see, and then they need to take precautions. They could probably see they weren't going to win that. So what they did, according to David Wilcox, is they went back in time and built a moon. And it was an escape pod. And then they had it ready for this. And then when this happened, they escaped in the moon. And then he claims that the inside of our moon is colonized, is outbuilded. I don't forget what the word he uses, where it's built out with rooms and structures and furniture for tall people, progenitors. And this is why the statues of the pharaohs are very tall, and they have different heights, because the longer they were on Earth, the shorter they got. But in the beginning, they were very tall. So it's not just a sign of their importance that they're tall. They actually were that tall. Then the giants were removed from the planet somehow, you know. And the story goes that the humans chased them away. I don't know. I think we had some help. Okay, that is part 2 about Saturn with the hieroglyph. I'm not sure how to hold this. I think it turns it, you know, whichever way. It'll turn it a different way. It's weird because it kind of looks like a person, huh? Okay. Thanks for watching, you guys. Talk to you soon.